that we don't do that because we're not addressing things. A lot of our work gets done at committee levels, and so if you're interested in something, you should really come and you're invited to any of the committee meetings, the police services, any of our working meetings. So if you want to hear sort of the process and not just the results at a council meeting, you should really come and join us at any of the meetings and see the actual working before we bring the reports to council. So anyway, just an invitation to know that you're welcome. Okay, attendance has been taken. Approval of the agenda, please. Councillor Howes, Councillor Pierce, all those in favor? Declarations, if any? Thank you. Presentations, delegations, the 2019 Accessibility Awards. I'd like to introduce Sheena Urich. There you are. Come on up.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, I would like to thank the Mayor and members of Council for having us today at the County Brant's annual Accessibility Advisory Awards.
I don't think she's on.
Recognizing those who have made significant efforts to remove barriers and create a barrier-free facility. The Accessibility Advisory Committee continues to expand and enhance accessibility throughout the County of Brant with a recognition program, accessibility action plan, and training opportunities. This week being National Accessibility Week, it seems only fitting to raise our flag, Accessible Brant, and celebrate the achievements in our community. To date, 36 businesses, organizations, community projects, and events have been recognized. It is with the efforts of everybody working together in our community to achieve an accessible Brant. Today, the Accessibility Advisory Committee will be recognizing 4 locations that have increased accessibility for the residents and visitors within our county. At this time, I'd like to call up Mayor Bailey and Drew Baird, Chair of the Accessibility Advisory Committee, to present these awards. Just 1 second.
Drew's here.
Drew is right there.
Yep. And so this one goes there you go. First to last. Okay, so the first one is to Hollow Willows Health Store.
The Hollow Willow Health Store is downtown Paris. Just look for the orange door and you'll be greeted by wonderful and very knowledgeable owner Sue to help you with your holistic health needs. Sue was in the process of connecting with Stopgap to purchase a temporary removable ramp for a regular customer using a mobility aid. At the same time, the Accessibility Advisory Committee did a presentation to the BIA about Ramp Up in Brant. The AAC worked with Sue to have a custom-built removable ramp designed for the front entrance of the store. For any customer using a mobility aid or a mother with a stroller, this lightweight modification creates ease of entry into the store. The Hollowell Health Store is accessible to many. It's just as easy as ringing the bell to get Sue's attention or calling ahead, and the ramp will be placed out for you. Congratulations to the Hollowell Health Store and their ongoing commitment to access and for taking part in the Ramp Up in Brant initiative.
Is anyone here from the store?
I do not believe Sue has made it.
And we also have something from Phil McColeman and Will Baumer too. So there are 3 certificates when we find someone who.
I said it would be a house.
Yeah, give it to them. Next.
Jason's Wheelhouse was built with a very special level in mind. This not-for-profit organization is designed to be an inclusive and barrier-free environment where guests have a safe space with the freedom to grow and be themselves. Guests visiting this special needs youth recreation center are between the ages of 15 to 21 and have access to gym equipment, a life skills room, a music room, a media and games room, an art room, a fenced backyard, friendly and welcoming staff, along with organized programming and classes. Congratulations to Jason's Wheelhouse for providing an exceptional space for exceptional people.
And Phil and Will have also set certificates.
A gathering place for families for many generations, Art Cadman Lions Park in Burford spans over 9 acres. You can walk from the center of town along Lions Trail over Whiteman's Creek into Lions Park. With walking trails, a picnic shelter, Lions Park is a host for many community events. Recently updated with paved pathways, accessible parking, and lights to illuminate the trail. Congratulations to the Art Cadman Lions Park in Burford on their achievements and their commitment to accessibility. This is a community win. The Scotland Community Centre opened to the public in May of 2017. This newly renovated recreation facility has a single gym, 2 community rooms, a fully equipped kitchen, and with that comes an accessible entrance and barrier-free washrooms. Since opening, this very busy facility has attracted many people who participate in recreational programs and services, as well as facility rentals. Accessibility is for everyone, and by having an accessible facility, we create opportunities for inclusion for all members in the community. Congratulations to Scotland Community Centre. This concludes our recipients. Could we get all recipients together for a final photo along with the members of the AAC that are present? And then I'd like to invite Mayor Bailey to say a few words.
I'll speak from here. You know what? One of my favorite committees to sit on is the Accessibility Committee because, you know what, it's all about doing the right thing and to make everyone has the same rights as anyone else to be able to be free to go where they want and shop where they want and play where they want. And it's also a good reminder to the county that we need to be very aware when we're putting in our curbs, when we're putting in our parking spaces, that none are side load vans, so we have to have them with spaces to the left and to the right of them, and they're not all sort of lined up. So sometimes things are done, obviously, with no malice, but things need to be corrected. And it's good that this committee meets on a regular basis with very interested and very interactive people. And the county has changed a great deal in the last, well, since I've been around, I've seen a lot of changes. But I think the Accessibility Committee has always been a good committee in the county. So I just hope this council supports them and we can sort of fast track anything that they might come up with, because it's not something that should be in a long-term plan. It needs to be something that's acted on when it's reported. So thank you for the support and thank you for the committee. They do great work. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just, I want to congratulate, as a member of the committee, all the winners. And it should be pointed out, because I'm sure that not all aware that not everybody gets an award. A lot are nominated and a lot are turned down. So, and I know that from personal experience. And I'd also have a message for Willie, for the Lions members of Burford. Just let them know that we're aware of the work they did there, and the committee is, and we'll be holding, weather permitting, our September meeting at the Lions Park. So we're excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, the second delegation is Don Bailey. If you'd like to come to the podium and state your name and your address for the record, please.
Is this on? I'm here to address, I was on the advisory committee, the cemetery advisory committee. My name was pulled from the advisory committee before it went to a vote, and there was no reason given. I'm going to give you a little introduction of my life. I've lived in the county of Brant all my life. 20 years old, I bought my first house on 9 Church Street, St. George. 87, I lived on Hagen Road, which is now known as Festie's Edge Golf Course. I farmed there. I hog farmed there. That was my farm there. Moved back to Governor's Road in 93. I run a cow calf operation there now. I buy all local, sell all local. I've volunteered all my life. 38 years in St. George I've volunteered. I've ran the St. George Ball Hockey League, president of that. South Dumfries Men's Slow Pitch League, I was president of that for upwards of 10 years. Glenmore's Co-Ed League, actually, Sundays, I actually started that league, and it ran until we ran out of diamond space, actually. I've coached over 50 ball teams and hockey teams in St. George over the years, in Cambridge, Linden, Brantford, Copetown. I've been a volunteer. I've never been removed from anything in my life. I've raced. I run a race team at Oswego Speedway and Flamborough Speedway. Raised 2 girls, both of them volunteer in the community, and both of them are with the Brant Horticultural Society, and they actually volunteered in St. George last weekend at a big plant sale. I joined the cemetery advisory committee because I thought I could give a lot to this community. My job is, for 38 years I've ran cemeteries, Hamilton, Oakville, Stouffville, Woodbridge, and Brampton and Burlington. I've overseen over 150 interments, 700 memorial installations, 200,000 cremations, and operated and maintained over 300 acres. To put it in perspective, the county of Brant do about roughly 200 interments a year. So in that span, they did about 5,000 interments. Probably 100 acres total, and yeah. So anyways, with the diverse cultures that are coming into the county, as you see walking around the county, there's I thought I could bring a lot to it. To have my name pulled out, I wasn't too happy about it. It was, I think I'm caught between a battle between the mayor and another citizen in this county, and it was retaliation for that, I think. I got a phone call at work back in August last year during the campaign that I had to go see the Ontario Provincial Police. I was a witness in a hate crime or slander campaign. When I got there, when I got to the police station, we got talking. I was interviewed by a detective, Dan Tweenham. He asked me if I received, because I actually told my mother. My mother called me, who actually, I guess I should, me and the mayor are biological brothers. So anyway, so we actually share the same mom. So because we're biological brothers, it makes sense, eh? So anyways, my mother called me the Wednesday before. I had to see the detective on the Monday. Then my mother called me and said, kind of accused me of putting these things in people's mailboxes. And I said, I didn't put them in the mailboxes. I said, I know who did, because I personally got handed one. And he said, who did it? So the citizen that Mr. Bailey, the Mayor Bailey is having the issues with, was the one that handed me the thing. He's never been to my property in 10 years. He was a friend of our dad's. And I don't know if I can mention his name here. Can I mention his name?
Not if you don't want to burst into flame.
No, okay. His name's Dave Thompson, okay? And I know he would not mind me mentioning his name. I do not hang around with Dave Thompson. He's never been back to my property since he handed me that thing. And anyways, I told my mother I know who did it. Dave Thompson handed me the thing. Well, that's why I got a call from the detective, because I was now a witness to who was distributing them. So anyways, I called in and said, yeah, he handed it to me. That's it. And the detective was very happy to hear that we now had a witness to somebody who was handing this out. Then he proceeded to ask me what I thought about the pamphlet. I said, well, the pamphlet is true. I actually heard the mayor say those things.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
The delegation is going on about something that has nothing to do with cemetery.
No, it does. Actually, before I get going here, the Heather Boyd sent me this thing here saying I have 10 minutes to talk. I will answer any questions after my 10 minutes. But I have 10 minutes to talk here, and I want my 10 minutes. It does have lots to do with it, because there's no reason, rhyme or reason, that I was removed from that cemetery board. Mr. Howes, I hung around with your dad there, and he'll say that I was a very valuable part of that cemetery and very knowledgeable. I actually went with Mr. Howes to the church cemetery and explained to him how to pin out and plug out cremation lots. So I've been around the business for a long time. I know every ethnic background. We do Muslim burials. I probably do 30,000 Muslim burials a year. I oversee probably 25 Chinese burials a year, Asian burials, all and Jamaican. We have Jamaican sections and all these. Like I deal with a feng shui master to plot out graves. So I think I could be very valuable to this county going forward, because as you can see when you're walking around the county, it's getting pretty diverse, and there's going to be more and more requests. We even doing a 7-day Adventist group now that we have to do Saturday burials. We have to do it. The human rights says you have to do it. If you may be able to throw a charge on there and say, but you have to do it. So anyways, to get to the next there is the investigation didn't go to the mayor's favor, because obviously he wanted this thing to be stopped, and they were investigating criminal harassment or spreading hate crime. Well, then when that didn't happen, things changed in the family a little bit too, towards me, with the mayor and his mother. And then I'm going to take you to the March 26th meeting here, the March 26th council meeting here. I'm going to quote the mayor on some of his things. It's unbelievable that someone could write a letter like that to affect someone's life like he tried to affect mine. Isn't that a coincidence? He pulled my name out of a committee that I had been good for 4 years and never had an issue, and it affected my life, because I do a lot of volunteering in the county of Brant. I've had people come up to me in St. George and ask me, actually I got one girl that her parents are going to be buried in Millgrove, and she asked me if I could put a tree, if she could put a tree with their name on it, a plaque with it, in St. George Cemetery. Her mother lives in St. George now. And I said, I don't know, I'm not on that committee no more. I was removed. She said, why were you removed? I said, I have no clue. I assumed I was removed because, let's face it, if you vote and you don't get put back on, then I'm happy with that. But later, I found out that my name was removed before the voting took place because of something I did. It was in camera. I can't find out what I did. And I found out, like, if it was in camera, the mayor shouldn't tell his family. I phoned my councilman, John Wheat, to say, hey, what happened? John Wheat advised me that he can't tell me. He isn't part of the committee, but he can't take it. If he was part of the committee, he couldn't take it out of camera. I said, you mean to tell me I could be slandered? I could have got slandered and removed for a slanderous thing, and I could never find that out. Would anybody here put up with that? Nobody would put up with that. If you come in, Steve, and your seat was missing tomorrow, and they said you're removed for something you said, would you not, like, You know, John, would you not wonder why you were moved?
One more minute, Mr. Bailey?
Anyways, and then another one here, another quote is, he had the nerve to, in another body to represent it, to have the fake news and nonsense that he come up with something like that, to take me out of another chair. Well, it's not fake news and nonsense. Mr. Chow was 17 years running Richie's Milk in St. George. That's not nonsense. The family ran it for over 20. The compassion level would be a little different in here if Mrs. Chow come in here and put this complaint in, because Dave Thompson come in here and put it, the compassion level ain't as good. Also, the diversity training that the mayor took, you know, he actually diverted that whole thing when he was told you guys he did. He, instead of saying, yes, I said it, it's done, he actually recommended you guys take the diversity training. Like, you guys wouldn't have said that. Why would the mayor say you guys take diversity training? Like, you guys think it's just crazy? And then the family said it, very tacky and just awful. I was mortified because of the cemetery. I got something here that shows you that they went to a council meeting right here, and my mother spoke. Mrs. Smith, who that's her married name, indicated that her family was no longer interested. Mrs. Smith further expressed that marker be moved down a row. Mrs. Smith shares a headstone with the mayor. He said in the Brantford paper that it was me that wanted that family down the row, and I'm down the row 90 feet, my headstones. They wanted the headstone removed. I can't even see the Choi headstone from my headstones. I got paper right here.
That's your 10 minutes, sir?
I'm going to keep talking. You're going to have to get the police in to remove me. This here, I got things right here.
Mr. Bailey, you have to stop talking.
Mrs. Smith expressed concerns
Mr. Bailey,
about
you
location of the
you
plot.
have to stop talking.
One row ahead of it currently. This should be moved one row ahead so that it's not there.
Turn his mic off.
Yeah.
All right.
That's what I figured would happen. I knew that was going to
The right thing usually happens. Are there questions to the presenter?
I think that you
Mr. Bailey.
keep going. I'll take questions. Hopefully you ask the right one.
Councillor Pierce.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I just have one question, and it's a simple yes or no answer. Do you think that you are the only one out of all the committees that we choose from that has been removed from, they put their name in and they've been removed? That's a yes or no answer. Do you feel that you are the only person that has been removed?
I think I was the only person.
Is that a yes or no answer, Mr. Bailey?
You ask the question, let me answer the question.
A yes or
Answer
no?
the question.
I was the only one that probably got my name removed before the process. I will say that. I'm probably the only one that got my name removed before the process.
Councillor
Well, I'm going to
Ferrier.
say that you're saying you probably and you assumed. Those are words that you chose. Those are words that you chose. You probably would have, probably did, and assumed. I'm here to tell you that you're not the only person that has been removed from committees.
I don't mind being removed from a committee. I realize that you're voting on, but to have my name removed for something I did. I want to know, it could be slanders. I want to know, I'm going to give the council, and I want to recommend, I need 30 days. It's privacy issues. I realize it's privacy issues, why you can't take it out of camera. I am willing right now to remove them privacy issues because I am the client. I'm a taxpayer. I want to know why I was removed. My name was pulled.
Councillor Ferrier.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you. I'm just looking here. It says in your letter, after 8 years on this board, I've been informed by a member of council that my name for reappointment to this board was rejected and removed by the mayor and a councillor as a result of my previous actions on this board. You wrote that correct in your letter?
Yes.
Well, we can't speak to what happens in camera. It's a very big breach of confidentiality, of procedure.
I understand.
So we can't speak to your question that you have for us, but since I can ask you a question, it says here again, I've been informed by a member of council that my name for reappointment to this board was rejected. That to me sounds like a breach of in-camera rules already. Which was the council member who informed you of that?
It was a family member that talked to
It says here a council member.
council member. Is he not a member of this council?
Okay.
Family member told me, and they're
So a family member told you that a council member told them? Because that's not what it says here. It says here,
I know,
I've been informed by,
I'm not I'm a cemetery, I'm not whatever.
okay, no, that was,
I just maybe miswrote that, but I feel that, do you not think as a citizen, I'm a taxpayer, they have a post-dated check for my property taxes this year, do you not?
so you were not informed by a council member directly about this? So somebody told you that somebody who's on council said something possibly, and we can't confirm or deny it because we are in camera and bound by those rules.
Right, but you're.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions to the presenter?
John?
Councillor Gatward.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have a question, but I hope you'll permit me to say you had an impressive list of volunteerism that you've done in the community with sports and so on, and I'd like to thank you for that volunteerism.
Any other questions?
I got one more thing to say though. If anybody in this community phones in a fake 911 call, you are charged with criminal harassment, public mischief. I went from Hamilton, because that policeman needed to talk to me that day, to go address this thing, and it wasn't even a thing. It was fake. It was, the mayor denied saying them things, and that was the basis of the hate crime and the criminal harassment. Once it was determined that he did say them, it was no longer an issue. That would be like a 911 somebody calling 911. I think that I recommend to this council that the mayor pay back the OPP, the money they're out for taxpayers. He used up resources. That's what they would say to you if you phone in a fake 911. You used up our resources. So he should either pay back that stuff or give a donation to victims of crime or something, because he knew it wasn't fake news. He knows it wasn't fake news. He says it was very tactful. He knows.
You're starting to repeat yourself. Thank you very much. You're finished. You're finished. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. How do you want to deal with this? All right. It's a separate hearing. No, you can, no. John's talking about the next item. You can sit down. Public hearing. Public hearing is a noise bylaw exemption Bluegrass Jamboree and the Mackenzie Creek Music Festival. I call a public hearing. Call if anyone in the audience wishes to speak to this application for the first time. Calling for anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this application for a second time, and calling to anyone in the audience wishing to speak to this application a third time. I call this public hearing concluded. Are there any comments from council? You can mention them later on on the agenda at the staff report. How do you want to go back and handle Mr. Bailey's presentation? Councillor Gatward.
Move to receive.
Miller, any other questions before we call the vote? Call the vote to receive. Thank you. Adoption of the minutes from the previous meeting. Councillor Bell?
We seem to have an economy measure here. We've only got one speak between John and I. I don't know if there's a message hidden in there somewhere or other.
I think it's on.
Not to worry. We will manage. We will survive.
It's all good.
Thank you. I feel like a whole councillor again.
Give me mine back.
So, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes, that the County of Brant Council minutes of April 23rd, 2019 and the special meeting minutes of May 7th and May 13th, 2019 be approved.
Seeking a seconder?
Seconder was Councillor Howes.
Councillor House. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Business arising from the minutes. There was a matter that was deferred on April the 23rd regarding a funding request from the Holy Trinity Church, and we deferred it because we didn't have all the information in to to make the decision. I think all the information has come in. We don't need a motion. We have a motion on the floor by Councillor Miller, who is seconded by Councillor Chambers. Is there any conversation to this before I call the vote? Councillor House?
This is a general comment about this. I believe from a previous conversation with staff that once passed, this would basically, this will have wrapped up the discretionary portion of our grant piggy bank. I thought just worth noting, we've had a lot of grant requests since budget time, and as far as I know, this basically empties the bank.
Yeah, and just to remind everyone what this was a $1,000 grant toward their music festival, and we deferred it, waiting for information. The information came through. I'm going to call the vote. All those in favor of giving them the $1,000? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Consent items to be approved. Councillor McAlpine.
I'll get this right yet. Okay, moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that the following consent item be approved: the application for the Manais bylaw exemption, number 1I and 2 for the Nelson Family Bluegrass Jamboree and Mackenzie Creek Music Festival be approved, I guess. You want me to read it all through?
Does he need to read it? Everyone's aware. Councillor Gatward?
I just want to say that this is the 7th year now for the Mackenzie Creek Music Festival, and it's drawing more and more people to the county. So I'm pleased it's doing well and that we supported them this year. Thank you.
Any other comments? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you.
Okay, and the following consent items moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes. 7B, number 1 through 17 be approved.
Anyone want them separated? Councillor Miller?
Just a comment on number 7, in the response from Roma to OGRA, extremely disappointing. So I know Mr. Thompson, Alan Thompson, who wrote that letter, and I'll talk to him. But yeah, very, very frustrating. Maybe we try again next year. I don't know what else to do.
Councillor Bell?
Thank you. With respect to number 2, Your Worship, the Places to Grow plan, I noticed that in the back, in one of the appendices, there are targets for the county to grow. They are unchanged, and I think that's something that I'm pleased to see. I had hoped that they might even reduce them.
Any other comments? Call the vote. All those in favor to receive? Thank you. Consent items? Oh, we got those. Number 8A, committee reports.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes, that the Community Service Committee report from May 6th be approved, noting there are 3 recommendations.
Any questions? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Councillor Wheat, planning.
Moved by myself, second by Councillor Bell, that the committee report of May 7th be approved.
Any questions, Councillor Wheat? Planning? Councillor Chambers.
Could I ask that recommendation number 1 be removed and voted on separately?
So we're just going to look at number 2 through number 7 at this point.
Okay. Yep. Any comments to any of 2 to 7? All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Want to speak to number 1? Councillor Chambers?
I just have a couple questions to clarify some what I think are misconceptions, if I might, through the chair to perhaps the either the CAO or the Director of Planning.
I'll field them unless I need help.
Yeah, okay. And the first question is with regard to what I think is a misconception. I've been talking to some people, and there is the feeling in some circles that this resolution is going to be very noticeable in that construction is going to stop and we're going to tap the brakes and nothing's going to happen. So to clarify that, I'm just wondering if either the chairman or the CAO or the planning director can just explain what people will see happening as a result of this. It's my understanding that the applications that are going to be deemed to be premature may indeed, if they were not deemed premature, take up to 4 or 5 and maybe perhaps longer to have any, what I'll call building activity. A lot of the building activity that we're seeing now that's causing a lot of concern, the applications for those were approved in some cases a decade ago. So just to be clear, when the people see this resolution, what are they going to perceive is happening as a result of this recommendation, and when will they see it?
I'll do my best to feel that. I don't feel, personally don't feel that they'll see anything visually right now, because there are many applications that have already been approved and they will go forward. It's my understanding if a developer submits a plan of application, we may have the opportunity, and I may lean to Mr. Trotter here, but I'm going to attempt to answer it, that if we deem it premature, the developer may appeal it to LPAT or the OMB. And then it'll be an LPAT decision. And I'm getting the nod that I am correct. So, in other words, Councillor Chambers, a developer can still come forward with an application.
But I guess what I'm getting at is what we see happening in, I'll say, South Paris and North Paris, the hurly-burly of development and the construction traffic and the commotion associated with building activity. That's going to continue. That's not going to stop because we are tapping the brakes. And I think people need to recognize that, because I think there is a misconception out there that we're stopping, and there's going to be a time when we catch up and then go on building. So just so people are aware, this resolution does absolutely nothing to stop what's going on visually out there now. What it does do is basically say that we are refusing to process any applications henceforth that may indeed create building activity or decrease building activity 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years from now. So they're not going to see a lot, if that's the expectation.
When I interpret it, you're absolutely correct. What has been approved, what is building in North and South, that's going to continue because those applications have already been approved. Now, if an application comes forward now, and we have the option of deeming it incomplete, and can send it back that way. But if it's a complete application and we don't want to deal with it, I think it could be tricky and could end up at an LPAT OMB decision, which quite often doesn't turn out in our favor. But we would have the option to negotiate the differences. But all those things they don't happen overnight, Mr. Chambers. They happen over a period of anywhere from 5 to 10 years. So you are correct in assuming it's a 5 to 10 year period.
And I do have another question, if I might, and I recall at the planning committee meeting, I referred to what's Roman numeral 5, the conditions that have to be met before we indeed process an application, or at least have the staff make a recommendation on an application. And I'll read it. Any necessary budget plans are in place to provide for the necessary infrastructure in support of the accompanying growth. And the more I read that, I have a question that perhaps someone can answer.
I'll try and field it. Direct it to me. If I need help, I'll
If,
look at
if
it.
we are, if we are not going to process applications, how are we going to know what infrastructure that we will have to put in place in order to approve them? And in this situation, it's the cart before the horse. We're supposed to approve something before we know what we need. And to me, that is a conundrum that needs to be rectified, or at least explained to me, because that condition never can be met.
You're correct. I don't think we've ever approved anything, Councillor Chambers, without having the necessary financial situation in order before we move forward. So you are correct in making that statement.
So condition number 5 is a catch-22 in that in order to budget for applications, we're going to have to know what the applications are, and if we deem them premature, we're not going to be able to budget for them. So I guess maybe someone can explain how that condition is going to be met so we can, in fact, begin at some point to process applications.
I'd like to take it on, Rob, and if I'm out of order, I will lead to you, but I'm going to debate Councillor Chambers and feel we've never approved anything without having the proper funding in order to move forward. And the majority of things like that comes to an agreement when it ends up at an LPAT or an OMB. Before you get there to sit down, you sit down with the said developer or planner, his agent, and come to an agreement on some of what you may seem, or I may seem, or the developer may seem as minor changes to allow the application to move forward. One of those is finances. Who's paying? And in the majority of the situation, the developer will lean in our favor if he wants to move forward and front-end the money.
So just to conclude the debate, if this is an application and we don't see it, how are we going to budget for it? That's my dilemma, and that's why I can't support this recommendation unless someone can tell me how we're going to budget for something that we don't see as a condition to move forward.
Well, you've got me backed into a corner because we can't budget for it until we see it.
We're going to call on Michael Bradley. Maybe he can clarify something.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I believe I can clarify it. So in the context of planning, and I'm not a planner, Mr. Trotter is a planner, but the official plan, the municipal official plan designates the land for growth. And then the municipality should undertake a range of studies, and we have not many of these going on right now. The Paris Master Servicing Plan is a good example where it quantifies and qualifies what servicing is required to facilitate the growth that's contemplated in that official plan. And so the Master Servicing Plan is one example. Environmental assessments, which also would do that. The Development Charge Background Study, and other infrastructure plans. There's many of them going on, right up to some of the recreational infrastructure plans that are happening. At that point, then, council can approve, and I think maybe the problem here is budget plans is probably not the right word. It should be financial plans. Would approve those financial plans. That would then give council the sense that those financial plans should roll into the annual budgeting process, and then it would be appropriate for council to be approving plans of subdivision come forward, noting that there is infrastructure in place. And I think one of the questions that we've received through some of these infrastructure planning processes we have going on is that, well, why didn't you build this 10 years ago? And it's a good question, and we've I think faced up to that question, and that's why we've triggered a number of these infrastructure studies that are underway now. So I think that answers the question, is that we would delay the consideration of further plans in the area that's designated for residential development in the official plan until we've gone through these infrastructure planning processes. Once they're approved, once they've set financial financial budget amounts for these infrastructure projects, and once they've then loaded into the budget, or maybe even been planned to load into future budgets, then those plans of subdivision come forward, and they can come forward on a sequential basis that's consistent with the infrastructure as it's built. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, and that financial planning is different than budgeting, and I'll make that amendment at the appropriate time. And I just wanted to say that it makes a little bit more sense that way, using what I'll call the approach into Paris on the Rest Acres Road. That is kind of what you're talking about. We've planned for that and budgeted for that, or have capital forecasted for that, financially planned for that. And I think that's what this is alluding to, is what you're saying. And if you'd like a move to amend that to reflect that clarification, I'd be happy to do that, or unless it's a friendly amendment. The CAO can give the right wording to change that so it's more appropriate. So it's not a catch-22. And
Had our CAO not feel that I was going to use the industrial park as a classic example, because we budgeted for that before we ever put any property on sale. There was not one lot of property, 1 acre of property sold until we had budgeted that entire process. Purchase of the land, the servicing, the grading, water, sewer, hydro. How was that all going to be? How are we going to get under the 403? That was all done before 1 acre of land was sold. This council budgeted that. And we didn't have any applications to purchase any land before we budgeted that. And I was part of that budget, so were you, so was Coleman, so was Galvin.
Any other discussion before we call the vote?
I think Mr. Chambers is going to make an amendment.
Do we need to?
Your worship, my suggestion is that point Roman numeral 5 would be any necessary financial plans. Replace the word budget with financial plans. So I would leave it to council whether that's a friendly amendment or requires a full amendment.
Councillor House?
Yeah, I would just second that as a friendly amendment.
Are you okay with that, Councillor Chambers? Yeah. Anyone else want to speak to it? Call the vote then, showing the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Thank you. Kanesville Community Center. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by myself, second by Councillor Goward, the Kanesville Community Center Ad Hoc Committee Report of May 8, 2019 be approved.
Any questions, Councillor Coleman? Councillor Chambers.
I just received an email about an invitation of a, maybe you can announce that, and just to congratulate the committee on a job well done that took a little bit of time, but I think they're moving in the right direction for the community.
Councillor Coleman, anything else to add?
I'm just going to add after we vote.
Okay. Any other questions to Councillor Coleman before we vote? Call the vote. All those in favor accepting?
The members of council, there is an open house this Thursday night, 6:30 to 8. See the plans and whatnot. Come. Onondaga is not far away either, so you can come and visit us down there in the Great South.
Thank you.
Far south.
The OPP Detachment Committee, Councillor Pierce.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes, that the Brant OPP Detachment Committee minutes of May 13th be received. It's only minutes, no recommendations.
Any questions to Councillor Pierce? Councillor Coleman?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This fitness equipment, where are we have to supply them with new equipment?
We are, my understanding is we are responsible for it's classified as part of the furniture, furnishings, and that falls under it. My understanding is we're going to be using some of what's come out of across the street. They do have some new equipment. Other than that, they will have to purchase new, yes.
Any other questions, Councillor Pierce? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor of accepting the report, thank you. Corporate Development, Councillor Chambers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Miller that the CDC report of May 13th be approved.
Any questions for Councillor Chambers? Seeing none, I'll call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. Public Works, Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Move by myself, second by Councilor Miller, that the Public Works Committee report for May 14th, 2019 be approved, noting there's 5 recommendations.
Any questions, Councillor Coleman? Seeing none, we'll call the vote to receive. All those in favor? Opposed? Carried. So back to my opening remarks. You can see how fast things go, and you really don't know what happened at any of those committees or any of those meetings. So all of the committee reports that we just received all have public meetings attached to them. So feel free to go in any of those meetings, and the contents of these reports will make a little bit more sense to you. Councillor Gatward. Number 9.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Miller, that COU Report 19-17 for Public Works RFT 1904 for the widening and urbanization of Rest Acres Road, King Edward Street, and Powerline Road, and construction of Arlington Parkway, and the resolution is as printed there.
Any questions to the resolution? Seeing none, call the vote. All those in favor? To approve, thank you. 9B, Councillor House.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Pierce. Item 9B, COU-1919, Paris Flood Risk Mitigation Class Environmental Assessment, Ecosystem Recovery, Inc., recommendation as detailed in the document provided.
Any questions for Councillor House? Seeing none, all those in favor? Opposed and carried. Number 10, information reports, communication. John Noble Home Committee. The John Noble Home Committee of Management has requested a County of Brant Council member to seek a delegation for the Minister of Health and Long-Term Care for 2019 Association of Municipalities of Ontario Conference. It hasn't been released yet. Council may like to make a resolution now if you think that we should spark up a delegation to meet with the minister. Councillor Wheat?
Move that, absolutely.
Okay. Seconded by Councillor Pierce. Any other questions? Councillor Chambers?
Councillor Wheeler, remember this.
Here we go.
So will Councillor Coleman and maybe the rest. This is a delegation that's going to be presented on behalf of the Committee of Management by the county, and the city is on board with this.
If I can respond to that, we went through that, as you well know, a few years ago. I'm the impression that at the John Noble Home meeting, that the city of Brantford is on board with us to do this, and I also made the motion at the John Noble Home that our chair of the John Noble Home Committee of Management, which is Richard Carpenter, make the presentation. Not so much a delegation of a council, whether it be the County of Brant or the City of Brantford, but the chair of the Committee of Management, which operates the home, make the presentation. And currently our chair at the home is Councillor Richard Carpenter.
Any other questions? Seeking none, we don't need a motion, resolution.
No, well, I've made the motion that we support this request,
Right,
yes,
right.
absolutely.
And I would expect, Mr. Mayor, if I might, that the city's considering this same,
Yes,
I would
Motion tonight.
think the city is doing the same
Yeah.
thing.
or
Yeah.
they're supposed to be,
Okay.
Yeah.
and they will.
All those in favor of supporting Councillor Wheat? Thank you. Can I get a mover for B and C, both letters, one from the Premier, and actually the second one is the notice of the open house in Canesville Community Center on Thursday, May the 30th. Thank you, Councillor Pierce. Councillor Ferrier. All those in favor of receiving? Yep, Councillor
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With respect to 11B, which is the letter announcing that in-year cost increases have been deferred, I think it's worthwhile just reflecting on what's going to happen here. And I'll speak from the context of the public health unit, and if Robert wishes to add in, please do. I mean, the simple issue here is that the government is choosing to fund less of the program for public health. And that public health program is actually dictated. There's no discretionary elements in it. You can have efficiencies to do what you have to do cheaper and better. But in principle, the government is saying, where I used to give 75%, next year I'm only going to give 70, and the year after I'm probably going to give 60. The implication is that if you cannot change the scope of what you do, the funding shortfall falls on the back of the municipalities. So it's just a heads up that, and this is probably going to happen in other areas as well, that whilst people will not see a reduction in their provincial taxes, the consequence of this is they may see an increase in their municipal property taxes to fund areas that provincial government previously have funded.
I think, Councillor Faria.
I just speak as Chair of the Paramedic Services, where Councillor Pearce and yourself, Mr. Mayor, also sit. That's true, and that's a concern. But this is still a good news story, at least for the next couple months, because we were looking at having to cancel a meeting to relook at the budget for paramedic services because it was completely out of whack. That system is a shared service, but we have to fund the first year of any new increases 100% before the province kicks in half the next term. That becomes very, very touchy. But with that being said, there are also, even though I personally don't agree with the creating of sort of mega areas for paramedic services, there may be some cost savings there depending on how the province rolls that out, if they fund it completely, et cetera, et cetera. So we really do have to wait and see, but a lot of signs are pointing to two things: a belt tightening next term for council, or next budget year, and also potential service issues. And we have to be aware of that in this news.
Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think there's a whole lot of clarity that needs to come from provincial government. Just to give one example, the provincial government has said they're going to reduce their contribution. In the same breath, they've said they expect to see 10% reduction in 10% improvement due to efficiencies. Now, whether that's on top of reducing what they give us, I don't know. And that whole area is leading to a challenge to certainly the public health unit, who is in essence operate independent of municipalities. The rule set is whatever they have to provide has to come from provincial government or municipal government. So they're caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment, with little information to really allow them to plan forward. The likelihood is, if the amalgamation as stated from 35 public health units down to 10 goes forward, Brant County Health Unit may not exist in its current form in a year from now. So we may find ourselves in a situation where we are working with Niagara, Haldeman, and Hamilton, and who knows what will happen at that point. It's really just raising a red flag as we go into our budget thinking for the coming year.
It's been a very stressful night. I still think we should receive it as a good news story. I need good news stories in my life today.
Temporarily.
So, anyway, any more questions on any of the received items? Resolution, Mark Laferriere.
Yes. Because this, just point of clarification to the clerk, because this is a new resolution, is there discussion beforehand, or should I read it and then we have discussion, just due to the timing? Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor McAlpine, 13A, Bill 108, More Homes, More Choices Act. Whereas the legislation that abolished the Ontario Municipal Board and replaced it with the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal, LPAT, received unanimous all-party support. Whereas all parties recognize that local governments should have the authority to uphold their provincially approved official plans, to uphold their community-driven planning. Whereas Bill 108, the More Homes, More Choices Act, will once again allow an unelected, unaccountable body to make decisions on how communities evolve and grow. Whereas on August 21st, 2018, Minister Clark once again signed the Memorandum of Understanding with the Association of Municipalities of Ontario and entered into a legally binding agreement recognizing Ontario municipalities as mature, accountable order of government. Whereas this MOU is enshrined in law as part of the Municipal Act, et cetera, et cetera. Whereas by signing this agreement, the province made a commitment to cooperating with municipal governments. Whereas Bill 108 impacts 15 different acts, and you can read them in the motion. Now therefore be it resolved that the County of Brant opposes Bill 108, which is in its current state will have negative consequences on community building and proper planning. That the County of Brant calls upon the Government of Ontario to halt the legislative advancement of Bill 108 to enable a fulsome consultation with municipalities like ours to ensure that its objectives for sound decision-making for housing growth meets local needs will be reasonably achieved. And that a copy of this motion be sent to the Premier of Ontario, the Honourable Christine Elliott, Deputy Premier, the Honourable Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs, the Honourable Andrew Horwath, Leader of the New Democratic Party, and all MPPs, including our own, in the province of Ontario. And a copy of this motion be sent to AMO and all Ontario municipalities for their consideration.
Discussion. There's no questions. Councillor Chambers.
Well, this is one of these resolutions that you can look at as half full or half empty. I can start asking specific questions about the different impacts on the 15 different acts that I'm sure well, let me just try one. How does this impact the Conservation Authorities Act?
So there's a few different things there. I don't have encyclopedic knowledge of that act, but with the biggest point being moving back from the LPAT, which we tend to agree, though not perfect, has been an improvement over the OMB. Moving back to an OMB type system will tend to favor housing development, which will potentially have impact on the conservation authorities. And we have two that we subscribe to in the county, and that becomes an issue there. And I'd also like to mention that other communities that have similar issues with this and have passed it unanimously or to a large degree, a majority, are Aurora, Niagara-on-the-Lake, Toronto, Oakville, Burlington, East Zora, Tavistock, and York Region. So far, with a number probably passing it tonight just due to the timing of when they want this resolution in for the province to consider.
So getting back to my question, with regard to the Conservation Authorities Act, would you be aware that the Long Point Conservation Authority, for example, reviewed the impact on their authority and found that there were several things that they were very supportive of, and they found several things that they weren't supportive of, but there are things definitely that they supported.
Yep, I am aware of that, but that said, again, we're asking for consultation with municipalities so that we can get further discussion and improvements made, because it is a glass half full, glass half empty type of resolution, as you said yourself, as I would imagine the bill is. And again, it's happening rather quickly. It's at second reading, I believe, so time is of the essence to put in some official formal complaint.
Again, getting back to my question about the Conservation Authorities Act, my point is that there are several things in Bill 108 that are deemed to be good. And this resolution is asking that the whole bill be halted. And I find that, and that's just one example of something that's good, recognizing that there are some things that are not so good, but you can't paint it all black when there are things that are good in it. And that's, let me finish. And that's why, and that's why I don't think we need to support this resolution. I think if we refer to staff, for example, on some of the things that impact us dramatically and adversely, I'd be more than happy to forward those comments off to the ministry, but I'm not prepared to out and out just tell them to stop what they're doing and lose some of the benefits that Bill 108 actually brings forth. And I don't even know some of the pros and cons about the 14 other acts that are listed here. So again, I feel uncomfortable in supporting a resolution such as this, in this form, when there may be things that I'm very supportive of in the Labor Relations Act, for example, which I believe there are things in there that affect the agricultural community, for example. So I'm not going to support the resolution. I'm not saying that I don't agree with everything in Bill 108, but I'm certainly not against everything in Bill 108, and I would sooner consult and discuss specifically rather than carte blanche, reject the whole thing.
I just wanted to wait for the member to be done. The only problem with that tact, and I agree, normally that would be the tact to take, but unfortunately recommendations from councils need to be in within the next 7 days. So again, it's asking to halt it. It's not saying to stop it forever. It's asking for halting so that further consultation can happen, so that the process you just described, where we can meet with staff and develop a more fulsome response to it, can happen. We can't do that tonight and in the next 5 days. So the recommendation, the resolution as written here, is to halt so that we can have that opportunity to do exactly what you've said.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm actually inclined to go where Councillor Chambers has gone, in the sense that there are good things in this Act, but the one that you've picked out, Mark, is specifically around LPAT and OMB. Is there a way of shaping your resolution to focus our concern and complaint on that part of the Act, rather than try to drop the whole Act? When if I remember rightly, some months ago, we had the same discussion about, I think it was Bill 66, and we focused it on Schedule 10, if I recall. Is there a way of sharpening your resolution to pick out the very schedules that we have the most concern about?
Sure. That's absolutely possible if you'd like to make a friendly amendment to it. However, again, I don't think this precludes that, and I don't see this as a negative resolution. I do see it as bringing up some of the points that are the most concerning to municipalities, including the one about LPAT and OMB, which is here. And I think that by supporting it, you're not necessarily lumping in all things are negative about this bill, but it does in the very beginning. I think the focus is already on what you suggested. But I'd be happy to receive a friendly resolution or recommendation.
Councillor Wheat first.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not going to support the resolution either. I think there's probably good and bad in both, but what I look at is a few years ago when we tried to assist Stubbe's Concrete in moving forward, and this would have helped us immensely. We had to go through a lot of over hurdles and through hoops to get Stubbe's moving forward, and we actually held Stubbe's up for a couple of years. This would have helped us. So I'm not going to support this resolution at this point in time.
Thank you. Councillor Miller.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Bell. In the Oxford County Council chambers, they share one mic between two speakers, just so you know. That's been on my chest ever since you picked your thing. I want to thank Councillor LaFerriere for bringing this forward. But I really like the way the discussion's going, because I kind of feel like you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater, to use another analogy. I'm really supportive, and Mark, you know this, of the provincial efforts to increase access to affordable housing. And we have a resident in Ward 4 who's so gun-ho on this. Mayor Bailey, you met him, a little bit of a strange fellow. But if we could tweak this, because I know there's genuine concern. I get it. I would prefer the LPAT over, the old way of doing things. But I will certainly, I'm not supporting putting everything on hold, because I don't think that's the way. But if we could, like I say, narrow it down to what really they need to look at, I will support that. So.
Of housing completely. There's nothing specific about public community affordable housing, other than by having more housing, it'll be cheaper. Well, we've seen in the town of Paris that by having more housing, it has not become cheaper. We have townhouses going for $430 when they used to go for $220.
Councillor Bell.
Maybe I can make that friendly amendment, if that's possible, to narrow down the focus of the resolution that Mark has put in, from the total of Bill 108 to Schedules 9 and Schedules 12, of Bill 108, which covers the LPAT and it covers the Impact on the Planning Act, which I think are the two areas that we have most concern about.
So that would be the 8th paragraph. Now therefore be resolved that the County of Brant opposes Schedules 9 and 12 of Bill 108. Adding that.
You okay with that?
Somebody has to second it, but
Yeah. Yeah. Councillor Howes has seconded it.
As a friendly amendment.
Yeah. So you're going to leave it on the table, Mark?
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions before we call the vote? Councillor Chambers?
I'm just not sure what we did. We just basically gutted the whole resolution and then,
Pretty much.
and then, so the proper way to do that, in my mind, is defeat it and then start again and be more specific, because what happens is the whereases don't sync with the therefores if you eliminate everything. And the resolution, I'd like to hear it before I vote on it, but
Yeah.
you've essentially taken the resolution off the table by the amendment, which is, you can call it a friendly one, but it's not too friendly.
I think Councillor LaFerriere is kind of frantic here with the time period. That's all. He's trying to,
yeah, and I disagree. There's only two therefores here, and if both of them have Schedule 9 and 12 inserted, then the motion reads very well, and it's very specific and focused on the areas that Councillor Miller and Councillor Bell both spoke to.
Councillor Wheat.
Thank you. At this point in time, the amendments haven't been approved.
That's right.
And until such time as the amendments are approved, they're not part of the discussion.
So let's vote on the amendments.
But we can call the vote.
Although they're moved and seconded, but the amendments have not been approved.
Is there any other, okay, let's call the vote then on the amendments. All those in favor? We have to read it first.
Should I start? Oh.
Madam Clerk.
So the motion is that the resolution regarding Bill 108 be amended to have the clauses, the therefore clauses read, now therefore be it resolved that the County of Brant opposes Schedule 9 and 12 of Bill 108, which in its current state will have negative consequences on community building and proper planning, that the County of Brant calls upon the Government of Ontario to halt the legislative advancement of Schedules 9 and 12 of Bill 108 to enable fulsome consultation with municipalities to ensure that its objectives for sound decision-making for housing growth that meets local needs will be reasonably achieved, and the rest would read as stated.
Councillor Chambers.
Okay, speaking to the amendment, what my point is, now the operative clause does not sync up with the whereases clause. You've got whereas Bill 108 will impact 15 different acts. You list them with the assumption it's impacting them, and then you collapse that down to your therefore clause to specifically narrow it into a section of one act. Now, does that mean that we are supporting all the other ones, or are there things in the other ones that we don't support? You've destroyed the validity of the recommendation with the amendment, and if it was me, I wouldn't even classify the amendment as being in order. It would be totally unfriendly to the resolution, but that's your choice.
Councillor Bell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't agree with Robert on this one. The list of the acts, the 15 different acts, they actually correlate to the schedules in the bill, and by implication, we have no objection to all of the other schedules apart from 9 and 12. So I don't think there's any inconsistency here.
Councillor LaFerriere.
Yeah, and further to that, again, saying that something impacts 15 different acts, it doesn't say it negatively or positively impacts, just that it has impact. And the whereas refers to consulting with municipalities like ours about that impact, positive or negative. It could become more positive, we could get rid of some of the negative, whatever it might be. This is a very moderate resolution about consultation with municipal partners, and now very specific to OMB, LPAT, and planning.
And Councillor Chambers.
And my suggestion would be to defeat the amendment, defeat the resolution, then put a resolution on specifically with regard to what you're speaking of, and then that may generate some support.
With that being said, we'll vote on the amendment. All those in favor of the amendment? Opposed? It's carried. So now we have to vote on the resolution as amended. Any other conversation? Call the vote. All those in favor? Opposed? And carried. Other business, we have none. Councillor Miller?
Mr. Mayor, could I just talk for 60 seconds about SWIFT?
Sure you can.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for not mentioning it earlier. For those that are not aware, SWIFT had an announcement last Wednesday in Simcoe, just to the south of us, on Thursday in, I want to say Wellington, Guelph, and on Friday in Lambton. Anyways, those three counties are in the first wave of counties to, where they issued RFPs to interested parties to provide, well, basically faster internet connections. So Brant was close because we desperately need it, but they wanted to kind of spread that first wave around the province, and unfortunately Norfolk is just a little bit further below us as far as access goes. So that's a good news story, and which is actually kind of a good thing, because depending on how this rollout goes, they'll probably tweak it a little bit, so when it does come to Brant, they'll do a better job. But anyways, so those media releases went out last week, and I'll have Heather share them with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anything else under new business that we forgot to put down? Number 15, Councillor Bell.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Howes, that Brant County Council convene in camera to consider advice subject to solicitor-client privilege. The staff report is COU 1918, municipal structure.
All those in favor? We're now in camera. I would ask people in the audience to